Hello, model railroaders. Well, as promised, back to the foam for the logging run. And I ended up using the PL Premium polyurethane construction adhesive. I didn't grab any video of putting it on because I wanted to try it out first. And I've let this sit probably, it says it goes about 30 minutes, but I've had it sit for about 4 hours at this point. And as you can see, it is holding it just fine, and all the joints are pretty good. A couple of them I ended up filling in a bit of the gaps with the adhesive. Up at the top there's the bottom, and let me talk to you about the setup I've got here. So on the table I've got a sheet of glass, looks like it's a 1/4 inch, and I have no idea where that glass came from. It used to be a top to a little coffee table I made way back in my teen years, so as I say, I have no idea where that came from. On top of that, just so nothing will stick to the glass, which is being my level work surface, my perfectly flat work surface, I've got some parchment paper. So my wife volunteered me a few feet of that from her baking supplies, and as you can see, there's a little gleam of adhesive there, but nothing was sticking down to the parchment paper, because what I didn't want was it to adhere to the glass and end up breaking the foam up or damaging it trying to scrape it up off the glass. So I figured, worst case, I can sand the parchment paper off if it sticks irrevocably to the surface. So the glass allowed me to glue each section together and keep it all perfectly flat, so that when I apply it to the layout, it will be as I envisioned it to be when this project started. The other piece here, as I mentioned, I have to mill out where the track's going to go. So let's go ahead and take the weights off it. And this one, I had put the T-pins back in where they went when I had originally pinned everything together to check its fit. So let's flip that over and take a look. You can see there's a little bit of extrusion there of the foam, but or the construction adhesive. But for the most part, the little two pieces there bonded together. There's a little bit oozing out over the edge, and otherwise it looks like it sealed well. Now, I didn't put a huge glob on it, but I did put more on this piece than these pieces, because this was the first one I did, so I probably put it on a little too thick, as you can see by the I don't know, 1/16 of an inch gap there, or maybe a millimeter gap. But this was going to get milled or routed, I should say, down where the track is going to flow down to a 2-inch height, so, or whatever the height was. I'm going to have to remeasure it now. 2.5. I'm going to say 2.5 inches, so that it matches up with this, because this will go in there like that. So whatever that height is, that's what I have to mill that edge down to. So one little bend done, and a couple more to go. So what we still have to get done, or we being the royal we, what I still have to work on is bonding those pieces together, and this corner over here running from there over to there. So this one will probably be the next one I work on, and as that's setting up, because I want to give it lots of time to set up, I'm going to give a try at fixing some example pieces of foam, and I've got a couple pieces here that I want to try joining the ends together. That way the end of the foam here and the end of the foam here, and where the other piece will merge up on the end here, as well as these other sections, I want them to be able to lock together so that everything lines up appropriately, and then I have to secure it down to the bench. Now, my thought, which we'll get into in a different video, is using some rare earth magnets. Get that off the steel desk. So they're very small. It's probably only 1/4 inch by 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to try, and as you can see, it takes a fair bit to get them to misalign, and they line up perfectly, if I can hold on to the darn things. So I'm going to use this test piece and just try adhering the magnets in one, lining it up on the other to get an indentation, and then hollowing out on the other side, and then gluing the opposite one in with probably a piece of parchment paper between them, so that the pieces don't stick together, and see if that will work in joining them up, because those aren't that horrendous of an investment. I had a little pack that I picked up to play with years ago and hadn't really found a use for them, but I think that will work. And potentially that could be one of the solutions of having these ones locked down to the surface of the plywood. So we'll see how that goes, but as I said, I'll do a future video regarding that. And really all I can say about gluing these together is just with the caulking gun, squeeze a bit out on a piece of scrap wood, and then just using a putty knife, put a very thin layer down on the one section of the foam, and then I just take the edge of the putty knife and do some scribes both ways, kind of like the notches in the trowel when you lay ceramic floors. So you use that notched trowel to put the lines in the grout, so that when you push the tile down, the glue has somewhere to, glue in this case, or the grout in the case of the tile, has somewhere to push into, so that you don't end up with gaps like I've got here, where I put it on a little thick, and granted it didn't seem that thick when I put it on, but seeing the gap, it definitely obviously went on a little thick. So that's about it, and then I just take the two pieces and kind of wiggle them back and forth against each other to get if the glue was on this side, to transfer it onto the other side, and then set the pieces on the flat work surface, and kind of give them a little wiggle to make sure that they're both completely seated flat, and then make sure that the edges here line up so that you know, you've got your smooth edges, as smooth as you can get. Now, I'm not too worried about any overlap or anything like that on these edges, because I'm going to latex paint the form, and then it's probably going to get something stuck to the outside of it, whether it be the Sculptamold or something like that. And that way, if I do have to take the layout apart in sections, whatever, like this would be one section, that would be another. My long runs up there, these two from here to here, and from this one down would be one section, and that I would just have to, I'm hoping, just bend them to disconnect them from the magnets, and they could lift up, and then when they need to go back in, they're going to lock back in exactly where they need to be. And the track will just have just like the other joiner tracks, will just have a 5-inch section of track that spans the gap, and then that will be removable to be able to pull those sections out. So unfortunately, I find that I don't really have a tilting head tripod that I can set the camera up at an angle and good, you know, lighting for you at a good angle to do it. I'll give it another try when I do some more foam sections, so that hopefully I can demonstrate what I've verbally described, but I'm not going to make any promises that the video will be any good. So if you see it, then definitely I was successful. So at this point, I'll sign off for now and see you in the next video.